I have a question here. How do I choose between private and public universities in the US? Okay, so good question. So there's some simple ways to do this. So firstly, if you hear something like Cornell University, Stanford University, Harvard University, what is it you recognize? It's always talks of the name first, and then university comes later. And if you're looking at, say, University of California, Los Angeles, University of Minnesota, Twin Cities, so you can then see that the University of is a name which comes first, and then the actual name of the university comes much later. So whenever you find that the University of is a prefix for the name of the university, then that tends to be a public university. And then if you're looking at more of like Stanford Universities, Harvard University, and so on, it's actually meaning that it's a private university. Of course, there's going to be a lot of exceptions. For example, University of Pennsylvania, it seems like a public university, but it's actually a private university. So you'll always find exceptions here and there. But again, you get the idea, right, of how to identify some of the private versus public universities. So that's one easy way for you to identify. And then you can also check up in the rankings. For example, US News rankings, they have rankings of public universities, they have rankings of private university. There's just a bunch of rankings out there. So check it up. You can easily find out what is it you want to apply for. So one of the questions you would ask is there a difference between the private and public universities? And I would say, yes, it's very important to know that the private universities are extremely expensive. And it's going to be very expensive for you to attend these universities. So if you're going for a PhD program, there's no worry because it's fully funded. They give you a full scholarship. And most PhD programs are for 5 years. This means that for 5 years, you're going to be a PhD student. You're going to be making good money. If you translate that money to, say, Asian currencies, it's going to be good money. So you can live a pretty comfortable life as a student if you get a full scholarship. And most PhDs do come with full scholarships. If you're an MS student, a master's student, it's very difficult because you have to pay a lot of money. There's a good chance that by the time you go to the US and finish a semester or two, there's a 40 to 50% chance that you could get some sort of funding. So don't overrule that scenario. That could happen. But again, do not over-index on it, that it will 100% happen. You have no idea whether it will happen. If it doesn't happen, then there's a choice to come back to India. That may not be a viable option. There's also one more option which many folks do not discuss, which is that after you spend a couple of months in the US, you can do something called a curriculum practical training. It's called CPT. You can actually go and work in a company for some time, take a break from studies, work in a company, and then come back. So people, for example, if they finish a year in college or maybe a semester in college, they want to do CPT, get some experience for maybe a year and a half, they can do that and then come back to college. This means that they get a valuable chance to make a little bit of money by the side and then come in for higher studies. But what you cannot avoid is the fact that to get your American visa for a master's program, since you're not getting funding, you'll have to show enough funds for the entire 2 years. And that number is going to be written in something called I-20 form, which will be sent to you when you get your admission letter. Your I-20 will mention how much funds you need to provide. And you can also see a lot of those copies on websites on the internet. There's, for example, a site called Grad Cafe. There are a bunch of grad admits. There are a bunch of websites where you can see all this information. So the thing is, look at the I-20, and that is the amount you will have to show. So how do you show that? That's a question you've got to ask yourself. If you're poor, does it mean that you cannot come to US? And I think if you ask me personally, I would say yes. If you are poor, it's probably going to be difficult for you to come to the US because US is very expensive, even for Americans. So even Americans don't want to pay money for their education. And I know, for example, when I was studying in Cornell universities, the undergrad students were paying around $50,000 to $60,000 just in terms of tuition per year. And it's a big deal for a lot of people because 4 years of undergrad can easily push up the cost to something like $200,000 to $40,000. That's very expensive even in the US. So I feel that American universities do prefer Americans when it comes to scholarships, and then they look at the international students. So if you absolutely want to go to US, then you need to look at all these parameters. For example, can you get CPT? Can you be in a place where there are a lot of jobs? Are you near a big city? And is the cost of living affordable? And what happens if you do not get funding? Do you come back? Is there a way for you to continue your education? So if you ask all these questions, then you will be in a better spot. So I'm going to stop here. If you have any further questions, let me know, and I can follow it up either in terms of comments or taking it up in a next video. Cheers, everyone.